at least in my lifetime. And before that, just because they do things, I mean, when this country started, without changing the subject, slavery was okay. We now realize it's not. Just because Congress says something's okay doesn't make it right. What makes it right is the science. And when all I can tell you about any science is when somebody refuses to have an open debate about it, you right away have to suspect their conclusions.
So I'm not going to today go through the scientific findings. I've done that on other programs. But the point today, in the middle of 2022, is to just remark with astonishment at the fact that there still is no debate about the science, and reputable scientists refute the catastrophic human-caused climate change theory. It's just.
But they try to do other things too. They try to appeal to human emotions. And when I say they try to appeal to human emotions, I heard this recently on our local radio station. Somebody called up and the lady was very sincere. She was worried about the polar bears up in the Arctic region because of climate change. Mm-hmm. And here's what I find very interesting about that. I don't know how much people know about polar bears. If that lady would go up to see that polar bear, first thing that polar bear would do would kill her, because polar bears are God's ultimate killing machines. I am not aware of anything that polar bears do that's useful for the climate or otherwise, but that's different. But what irritates me is we are more worried about the polar bears, and this changes the subject a little bit, than we're worried about human. And I'm talking about abortion, because that's a debate right now. We don't have a problem killing babies, but we got to protect those polar bears.
Rodney, I've seen pictures of those polar bears. They're so cute. What?
Well, I'll tell you what, a daddy polar bear, if he sees it, it's not his cubs, they won't be cute long because he'll take care of them. Polar bears are God's ultimate killing machines, and I'm sorry, I understand why we have them, but they don't add anything.
Well, you know what, I've done a little bit of research on that, and studies show that the polar bear population is not in jeopardy. People have been worried about the polar bears for decades, but their population is not going down. It's growing.
Well, it's not only growing, and my joke is when I call the radio station is, I know enough about polar bears. If it does melt up there, they will migrate south because there's not too much that's higher in the food chain than they are. They're not going to have trouble with the moose or anything else that they encounter as they move down to Canada, coming towards California. And then they'll have it easy in California. Everything's going to be tender and juicy.
All right. Well, I have written a book on this. I want to promote here a little bit, the climate change hoax argument, and it's available at my website, www.cpaulsmith.com. I published the book, or wrote it a year or so ago, right about the time, just before Biden won the election. And I finished it then, and I said, my goodness, this is very important. And so it's been out there for a year and a half. And as I look back on it, I said, man, I had this nailed. One of the things I want to get into, and we'll get into more of it on the program, part 2 that we're going to start in a minute, is some of the researchers' predictions of what would happen. Before we end our discussions, are there any other questions or comments that you have, Rodney?
Well, Paul, I'd ask you one question for anybody listening out there. Ask yourself this question. If climate change is as critical and as important as all these politicians and so forth are telling us, and scientists, why are they not setting the example for us?
Well, like what?
Well, they fly their own private jets into those conferences. Nancy Pelosi still flies in a plane that'll carry 300 people when she could have a G4 or G5, which is much more economical to take her back and forth to California. They don't set the example. It's, to me, if you really believe something's that critical, the royalty also have to obey the rules as well as the peasants, because climate, Mother Earth, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't respect your status in the population. Everything has equal consequences.
You know, I think everybody sees the hypocrisy, and I think the hypocrisy is helping truth seekers to recognize that they're not really serious about it.
I hope you're right.
I mean, but frankly, I know what their answer is. Their answer is that the work I am doing is so important that this cost is worth it. But frankly, I think that's a very shallow and wrong answer, because frankly, they could fly commercial and go other ways to almost everything they do if they were really serious about it.
Well, I would say to the people very quickly, if they think that it's true, it's that important, here's what's more important, and that is that you are able to buy fuel so you can get to work. It's important that you have a job, and it's important that you can get food on the table. That's more important than what is projected to happen 30 years from now. Always worry about today's problems. Tomorrow's problems will resolve themselves.
Well said. I mean, frankly, I believe the supporters of the Green New Deal, some of them are people who are genuinely fooled by the hoax. A lot of them know full well they're wrong and don't care, including the Marxists who support climate change because it's an opportunity to control.
Absolutely.
Well, we're going to continue our discussion next time in part 2 of this discussion about the economic damages caused by climate change fanaticism. But that concludes our discussion for today. Thanks for joining us. Remember, the liberties we enjoy in America can be maintained only when its citizens are moral and informed participants in the democratic processes. The closing arguments can help with this. We'll see you next time. This is Paul Smith.